was.
I know it's different.
Are we all done, council? Because we're gonna get started. All right, it's 6 o'clock, people. Thank you for being quiet for us. And people online, if you haven't muted yet, if you could please do that, would be fantastic. We'll call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. We respect and recognize the First Nations within whose unceded lands the village of Kaslo is situated, including the Tanaha, the Snakes, and the Silks people, and the Indigenous and Métis residents of our community. I have a motion to adopt the agenda as presented by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Leakwood. Any discussion? All those in favor? The motion to adopt the minutes of the August 26th regular meeting of council, if there's no errors or omissions. By Councillor Leakwood, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? It is carried. So we have one delegation this evening from Anne Malik, and she's provided staff with a presentation. So she'll go walk through that. So Anne, 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll allow 5 minutes for council questions after that. So welcome, Anne.
Thank you. Mayor Hewitt, councillors. The South Beach floodplain is subject to two risks: high velocity debris flows from Kaslo River and inundation by floodwaters from Kootenay Lake. I'm just syncing with Joni on slides. Are you with me?
Yeah. It was working previously. Sorry, just give me 1 minute.
Yeah. I'll talk over and I'll start looking at it. The proposed concrete block wall only serves to mitigate the risk from Kaslo River. Given the potential for transfer of risk to municipal property and Lower Kaslo, this unsightly wall should not be permitted as support infrastructure. The natural water-land interaction between Kaslo River and South Beach should be preserved as it softens the impacts of catastrophic flooding. Joni? To mitigate flooding from Kootenay Lake, the engineer has recommended that all permanent infrastructure on the site must be located above the 200-year Kootenay Lake floodplain elevation. Infrastructure would normally include RV pads, utilities, and yet most of the site is below the required elevation. So what does the Regional District of Central Kootenay Planning Department have to say? Well, they have a document, and they tell me that parts of the area east of the bridge are within the floodplain and within a non-standard flood and erosion area, an area where there are flooding and erosion hazards which require special additional precautions. Siting preference and financial constraints are not considered considerations for a site-specific floodplain exemption, something the developer may have been seeking. South Beach elevations. This map identifies 3 areas that vary in the amount of fill required to bring the area up to the flood construction level. Fill that would adversely affect the natural environment to an unacceptable level. Surely, that fill cannot be considered an acceptable option. This on the left is the latest current RV park layout. And when you take their layout and you overlay it on the RV park layout, or when you overlay the RV park layout on the elevation map, you can see that possibly there are 26 to 28 sites in the area of highest elevation. But it doesn't matter if you overlay the RV park plan on maps that depict elevation, the lakefront protection development permit area, or the schedule from the village's floodplain bylaw. They all illustrate it is only the pocket of land up in the upper northwest corner that may be suitable for sites with in-ground services. Mr. Unruh wrote the village, and he's wanting to work collaboratively with the village council in the development of a much needed campground. I'm sorry, but contrary to his words, what the developer has proposed is not a campground. A legal opinion has determined that RV park straddle lots permitting 8-month occupancy would establish long-term residential use of the property, and this does not comply with Kaslo's OCP. But RV parks are not necessarily their land strata developments. And council, you have the authority to deny strata lots as a permitted use in a zoning bylaw. A strata RV park, next slide, Jody, is not a campground. It is a private, gated cottage community. But you know, today, many RVs are self-contained units that have all the necessary facilities for living within the vehicle itself, allowing it to function without external hookups. Today, there are low-impact RV parks that prioritize minimizing environmental disturbance and offer a more natural camping experience. Many such parks offer sites with no hookups, encouraging self-sufficiency and reducing reliance on park amenities. And both the developer and the community have expressed support for a campground. Indeed, how did the community respond to this OCP survey question? What type of new tourism and transient accommodation would you like to see developed? Well, what's the single largest word there? Campground. Through zoning, council has the opportunity to strike a balance between private development and community values. I'm asking you to rewrite bylaw 1298 to shape a vision for development that our community could embrace. Act in accordance with the OCP waterfront development area policy that states to regulate specific uses through zoning. Put the developer's words to the test. Create a distinct zone for recreation RV camping with its purpose to be regulation of a private development of a seasonal and temporary camping facility in a floodplain. Take a proactive approach. Require sustainable practices and eco-friendly technologies. This new vision, would it look like? You could permit fully serviced sites in the area of highest elevation. Permit non-service sites elsewhere. Require natural crushed products or hard pack base, pavers or stone for permeability on roadways and site paths. Keep accessory structures and park amenities to a minimum to avoid flood debris flow material ending up in Kootenai Lake. And encourage passive regulation. For example, regulations are going to have to specify that there should be no beaching or overnight storage of motorboats or jet skis on the beach. And you could prioritize dark sky friendly lighting practices. So what does this new vision accomplish? It reduces the extent and impact of development within the lakefront protection development permit area. It eliminates the proposed concrete block wall and the transfer of risk. It preserves the natural water-land interaction between Kaslo River and South Beach. And it also complies, respects, and acknowledges many objectives and policies in Kaslo's official community plan. This new vision, though, also maintains the private landowner's ability to develop a seasonal campground under industrial zoning, albeit there would be regulations in the village's best interest. This new vision also aligns with the North Kootenay Lake tourism goal. Although our goal is to increase the value of tourism in our region year after year, we also have the goal to ensure that the type of tourism we are promoting is aligned with the desires of the residents who live in our communities. This new vision provides council and the developer the opportunity to carve out a unique niche in the highly competitive tourism market. Imagine, council, reshape this development so our community can embrace it. Imagine Kaslo just being Kaslo. Bay breeze, mountain backdrops, and that low-key kind of magic. Imagine a low-impact campground set back 30 meters from Kootenay Lake. Imagine a low-impact campground that allows the natural water-land interaction to take place. Council, reshape this development through zoning and create a legacy. It's the legacy that future generations deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Good.
All right, so we've got a couple of minutes for council questions, and if you could direct your questions and your answers through the chair, please. Councillor Leithwood.
Through the chair. I really appreciate the fact that you always provide a lot of information and always backtrack your thinking, which really helps our thinking. Just the vision for having a seasonal campground. So how long would you see that season?
No different than our municipal campground, 6 months.
6 months, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Through the chair. And just sort of clarify, in this vision through the zoning bylaws, we would use the bylaw to encourage a campground as opposed to a strata title. So this suggestion that you're making would make it so that the developer were not able to do a strata, or were either able to do strata on service sites that were up at the top.
If you look at bylaw 1298, the first section is permitted uses. You will decide what permitted uses are. Currently, bylaw 1298 has a permitted use as a recreational strata lot. That doesn't have to be there.
Councillor Bird.
Through the chair. A little confused about one of your slides where it said that, and this is where I want you to correct me, that what your vision there, would that be possible under an industrial zoning?
He could have a seasonal campground on his lots, and vehicles would be driving on all the village's road allowances. Right? Under industrial zoning, if you follow the zoning, the land use bylaw through, industrial zoning permits uses that are in the commercial zone. That zone permits uses that are in, and it follows through that he could develop a campground.
You have a supplementary?
Yeah, through the chair, just follow up then. In order to rezone it away from industrial, it's currently industrial, to rezone it, that would give a council the opportunity to put in those kinds of restrictions that we don't have the power to do under industrials.
Yes, and that was the original intention, that through rezoning, you would have a hand in shaping that zone. Yes.
Any further questions? Got a question through to Ian.
Yes.
Sitting at the back there. The draft of 1298, that was developed to bring the zoning bylaw into compliance with the OCP, correct?
1298 was based on the request from the developer
Okay.
for the development application.
Okay,
That's what the revised zoning was based on, was the development application.
okay. And if I can ask a further one, what is the current, because we've been talking about so many things, what's the current zoning as according to the OCP and the current as far as the zoning bylaw, because they aren't in keeping at this point.
Correct. So in the OCP, it's designated as waterfront development, which is the same as the other areas of Kaslo Bay, et cetera.
Mhm.
And in zoning, it is designated as industrial, which is a holdover from when it was the mill site. And the previous OCP had it as a comprehensive development area, which would be, again, similar to waterfront development.
Thank you. All right. Any further questions? All right,
Thank you.
Joanne? Great, so we'll move into our information items. Council reports. I've provided my written report. Do any member of council have questions regarding my report? Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair. This isn't specifically about the report, but what's happening at the transfer station? Because there was a notice that said only household waste, and there was some people were asking about the recycling.
I would suspect it's probably because they're at capacity.
Okay.
And, or there's truck issues with getting trucks up to remove the waste, so they don't want large quantities. That's just a guess, because they
Mhm.
don't normally publicize why
Mhm.
that's happening, but that would be my guess, that there's probably transportation issues getting it away from our site
Okay.
to the larger site.
Okay.
All right, do any members of council have reports to provide? All right, so we'll move into, and there's no committee meeting, so we'll move to the CAO report. Bill Baker.
And much. Staff are in the middle of reviewing the village's bylaw, and procedures bylaw, and communications policy, and aiming to bring forward options for council to consider at one of your October meetings. And the council remuneration task force is underway. They had their first meeting this morning or this afternoon, selected a chair, and collectively reviewed the terms of reference as well as existing bylaws that affect council remuneration. Next step would be for the members to review the UBCM guide for council remuneration. And staff are going to assemble a list of villages that have comparable services to the village of Kaslo. I know council appreciates Kaslo's somewhat unique with water, sewer services, historical sites, an arena and golf course and many recreation facilities, as well as tourism being its main economic driver at this point. So looking for villages that are comparable so that when recommendations are made, there's some reference point to benchmarking that's occurred. So their next meeting is going to be next week, the week of September 15th. RDCK grant application, they applied for an FCM Green Municipal to the Green Municipal Fund for the development of climate ready plans and processes. So if their application is successful, the village would be able to participate not only in the process that they go through, but subsequent phases like feasibility studies or implementation of recommendations. village would be eligible for grant funding. So I believe that answers a question that had come up. Regional district does the initial study. Can we then benefit from the implementation of it for grants? So the answer is yes. WildSafe staff met with the local WildSafe staff and reviewed this year's efforts. Usual challenges, bears and fruit trees, and the village will do its best to help promote bear safety and being bear aware and collecting fruit that's fallen from trees as we head into the fall. And then we can expect a presentation from the local WildSafe representative in about November. Fire Smart. So we've received confirmation of funding from UBCM for our Fire Smart program. Recruitment of a coordinator is in process, as well as discussions with the RDCK about renewing a services agreement for the delivery of home assessments, the rebate program, and neighborhood recognition program. The previous agreement expired at the end of January. Right around the same time our UVCM funding had run out. So we'll regroup and keep moving forward with our Fire Smart efforts. There's been discussion in the public, as well as I think been sent to council about the highway exit and the earthworks that's occurring on the Highway 31 A Avenue from kind of halfway up the hill. So just to give you an update, the property owner has a permit from the ministry for highway access, and that permit has conditions tied to it. And so in order for the village to at some point potentially approve a subdivision, we'll have to verify that they're adhering to the conditions of that permit. So the village has some oversight. The province, in the meantime, the Ministry of Transportation has provided them with a permit with conditions, and then we'll just continue to monitor it. And if anything changes, then they'll have to go back to the province and get their permit adjusted or seek changes, request changes, whatever the process is. So at this point, everything is above board. Water utility, we have our McDonald Creek agreement that will expire at the end of 2025. And that agreement's between the village and RDCK to provide water service to residents in the RDCK. Draft agreement's been provided to village staff, and the plan is for staff to review that agreement, develop a staff report, and identify for council what the differences are, what's changed, what's hasn't changed, and then look for council input on any further adjustments you'd like to see in the agreement. So you can expect that at the first meeting in October. Further to our water utility, you might recall that we've been reviewing the requirements of our operational certificate. There's some procedures that staff are developing. And we're going to be issuing an RFP for source water protection plan in the very near future, as well as looking to get our cross connection control program off the ground. So all of those are a part of the requirements for our water utility certificate. So they're in the works. And when it comes to wastewater, sewer, there was a periodic inspection by the ministry back at the end of July. We are waiting for a report from them that identifies any work they'd like us to perform. And staff will be issuing an RFP for source control in the near future as well, trying to control what we allow to enter into our sewer system. Thank you, Mayor Hewitt.
Baker, are there any questions on Neil's report? Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair, for the highway exit, are there, when you say construction standards, is that like road conditions? Because I'm just thinking of going into the winter with trying to access that road with snowy conditions and.
Through the chair, I don't believe there was anything that I recall specific to winter or conditions. It was more what does it need to look like as far as barricades and paving, and don't think it was related though to winter conditions.
A supplemental?
It just, I mean, I know there's public concern with, because they are accessing halfway down the highway. We've got, logging trucks, and when the roads are quite icy, it's like an accident waiting to happen. So what can we ask the Ministry of Transport if there is any consideration to that. I mean, we do have pretty bad highways in the winter.
Yeah, through the chair, there was a discussion between village staff and the province to identify, make sure the province clearly understands that it's a steep hill. And so there would be no left-hand turns heading west up the hill. There's no left-hand turns. You'd have to be coming down. And I think one of the constraints is there's no other place to access that property. You know, that's the road in order to get to those lots. And so in order to work with the property owner, you know, this is the only area that access can be provided. And so I think they've tightened up their general conditions for highway access and done what they can. Maybe the only other thing to do is, if and when accidents do occur, then it has to get revisited. ICBC provides us with a report. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Bird?
Through the chair, so the last item there, wastewater utility, so I'm assuming that is sewer, right? What about street resident? So is there any is Ministry of Environment or any other branch ever brought forward any concerns about the runoff from the street to Kootenay Lake?
Through the chair, I haven't heard of any concerns being raised. Certainly the village, you know, is conscious of our stormwater and drainage systems, which are fairly rudimentary. And if council is interested, a full review and recommendations could be done. Talk about it through strategic planning, quite a major project, but certainly an option.
Supplemental?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, there was a study, I'm not sure if it's completed, on the monitoring lake water for quality of lake water, and I believe that was something that came across our desk recently, that the study was either ongoing or completed. Can any information about that?
Through the chair, so that study was focusing on whether there was failed septic systems that might be seeping into Kootenay Lake, and it came back negative, meaning no concerns whatsoever, and didn't focus on runoff from roads or anything like that.
Questions for CAOB? Thank you. All right, Community Development Program grants. We just got the letters informing us of the successful applications for the arena, the City Hall exterior painting, and the Campbell Memorial Center renovations, and the contracts that go with them. And so are there any, the correspondence is deemed to be accepted. And is there anyone that would like to discuss any of those items? Councillor Bird.
Yeah, through the chair, actually, there's a couple I'd like to pull. The two letters from Ann Malik about public access to water, and raising some interesting points there that seem to be, he's found some legislation that would indicate that the idea that we have had about access to water, which is basically a path along the, in order, doing the exchange where we're losing our roads, and what we're gaining is a 30-meter riparian zone and public walkway to Kootenay Lake along its South Beach. But she's found some legislation that indicates that there's no way that you could call that riparian zone an access, and that in fact another more proper access, like a 20-meter, I guess a 20-meter is a lane and a 60-meter is a foot, right? 20 foot, is it meters or feet? It's, but this is something I wouldn't mind having our planning lawyer look into, or or maybe just do it in-house and perhaps, our manager of strategic initiatives could have a look at whether she's making a valid point there about, that the access that we have bargained for is not actually, adequate or even legal.
Okay. So you're asking that that be referred to staff for
Yes.
further research. Okay, would
Yes.
you like to make a motion to that effect?
Yes, I'd like to, refer, the letter or the information brought forward by Ann Malik in the correspondence of this meeting, be, given to staff to investigate and, come back with an opinion, hopefully a legal opinion.
Second, Councillor Brown, any discussion? Councillor Leawood.
Through the chair. Would our lawyer not have already identified that?
To the chair, we've already discussed it with a lawyer maybe about 2 years ago. And proceeded based on the information we received that there's undeveloped road allowances that don't provide, or there's undeveloped road allowances. And so if the village is going to dispose of the land, the village needs to make sure it's providing equal to or better access to the river and the lake, which until this discussion seemed like there was agreement from council that it does provide equal or better access to the river and lake.
So it could be that the staff will just bring forward that report that identified that information, because 2 years is a long time and we've had a lot of information in the interim. But there are a lot of steps that we do have to go through. The ministry would not allow us to do it if it wasn't allowed. So there are still many steps to go through before any purchase and sale is finalized. There are 19 conditions that have to be met. So it is not done by any means. Mr. Brown?
Through the chair. So in the letter, there were 3 specific questions asked, which I would be interested in hearing the answers to. I also feel that there's sufficient information and questions that have been raised that I would like to see this added as a business item for the next meeting. Perhaps at that time, we'll have answers to some of these
Sorry,
questions.
you do have a motion on the table.
Oh, we
right
do.
now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll vote on that before.
Well, and I think referring it to staff will, right, that it gets the same, it doesn't say that it's going to come back to the next meeting because we don't know what, we know that CAO is going to be gone at UBCM, as are we. So I think putting that timeline on is unreasonable because we don't know what their workload is like at this point. But referring it to staff, they will look at the entire document, not just what Councillor Bird mentioned. So I think that we can be rest assured that if they're looking at it, they'll look at the entire document and provide information and at least be able to be prepared to give answers to your questions.
Okay.
That would be my guess, is they're not just gonna, any further discussion? And this is just referring it to staff. Okay, well, those.
Through the chair, I suppose I would just say, ask or request that when we're reviewing and gaining information, if we could specifically focus on 3 questions that were asked, and if those could be answered as part of that information, then I would appreciate it.
So would you like to amend the motion to include that?
If it was acceptable.
Provide answers to the questions posed in the correspondence.
So there's 3 questions.
Agreeable with the mover and the seconder. Any further discussion? Favor? Here, and you had a second item?
Yes, through the chair. This is, an item that we've had, some information given to us but via email from the CAO, but, it is the letter about boat moorage. And, so it always ends up being like, whose jurisdiction is it to regulate, houseboats? And it's not just houseboats, but this is a letter from the boat club that points out that there's so many boats tethered to buoys in the bay that given a big storm, they're actually concerned about their any one of them getting loose and damaging their property, which is legitimate. But so we've had some information about the process by which one can find out who's regulating it and how to promote regulation. And I just thought under the now that we're in public, maybe the CAO could offer some information, where we're at in looking after this issue.
Through the chair. So as far as, the potential of boats coming loose and hitting other boats, is that the question?
Just generally, we've had this, there was a letter at our last meeting, about who regulates the houseboats. And then this current letter is, gone a bit further in looking at all the boats. And what kind of control does Kaslo have to keep Kaslo property safe, over the people that are parking, permanently, but so they park on the side of the bay, and they just leave their trucks there months in and months out, and they live on that houseboat. And is there absolutely no way that the village of Kaslo has any power to regulate that? Or if that's true, then who does? And what are we doing about moving that forward?
Through the chair, so the village has the ability to regulate parking, including trucks that are parked along it's a Kaslo Bay Road, I believe, all the way up and down. So if council is interested, we can further regulate where people are allowed to park their vehicles. The challenge, of course, will be enforcement. We don't have the capacity to enforce those types of things at this point.
And I think the other question was about whose responsibility it is to regulate on the water and the buoys, which are typically federal, but it sounded like the federal government hasn't authorized all the buoys in, so it's more of a federal government issue in that respect. And
Mayor Hewitt, so staff had emailed the contact at Transport Canada just to get further clarification on whether we're understanding that correctly and if the village does have any jurisdiction. Haven't heard back, so certainly can let council know if we hear something to the contrary. But up until this point, it's our understanding that Transport Canada is the one who issues the permits for the buoys. And if any of them are not permitted, then they would deal with it.
thank you. Councillor Brown, you had items that you.
It was the items
Same
that
ones?
pulled, yeah.
Oh, okay. Great. Then that brings us to question period at 6:39. So we allow 15 minutes for questions and, okay, Anne, we'll go to you first.
In regard to the Land Titles Act and access to water, does council understand the approving officer's authority? And in this case, the approving officer in Casway is our CAO. And has council specifically directed him to recommend that legislation be relieved?
So that legislation be relieved?
Yes, there is legislation that dictates access to water. Section 76 of the Land Covenants Act explains that when that property is within a municipality, the approving officer may apply to the minister and recommend that legislation be relieved. So you don't have to follow legislation. So I am asking, has this council provided specific direction to our approving officer to seek relief from legislation?
I would say no, because there would have been a council resolution to that effect.
Thank you.
Not being corrected, so yeah, we had no resolution to that effect. Right. My chair.
There you
Okay, Jim.
Thank you. So, the Regional District of Central Kootenai Steep Creek study identified Kaslo River as high risk. The CTQ development study, based on modeling, it's called HECRAS, two-dimensional modeling, shows a proposed wall or eventual modeling was done on the river. And in that report, in that study, it shows a proposed wall that needs to be constructed to the 200-year flood level on the border of the riparian area. The concrete portion of the wall varies in height as specified in the report, in that study from CTQ, from 2 feet high at the beginning, near the top where the entrance is. It can reach a height of 6 feet along the course, and it extends all the way down the length of the river to the mouth. The developer is proposing to build a trail at the base of this wall for public access. So what we know is that the level of the water on the trail during the 200-year flood level, which is the top of the wall constructed, that's its wall, the flooding there will be anywhere from 2 feet deep to 6 feet deep over that trail. The problem is that the modeling used to establish this information is based on an analysis that does not include the transfer risk of this wall. So the study that set these flood levels where the trail is going to be now were done without the wall being there. The only way to ensure the safety of the public in using the new trail is to do the HECRAS two-dimensional modeling with the proposed wall taken into account. This is recommended by the Watershed Engineering Report and a different engineering report that this modeling should be done. If the development is approved along a high-risk area and there is a flood that causes damage or worse, physical harm, who's liable? Is the village as the approving agency of the development and building the trail? Is the RDCK liable since they identified the risk? Or is the developer liable who's going to actually build the trail? The question is, will the village immediately ensure a commission of this modeling to report what the situation will be with the wall in place as far as the status of a trail at the base of it? So it's important to do this modeling. And it's recommended in your watershed report. And it'd be prudent before you move forward making decisions on this that you establish whether this trail will be safe or not. That's my question.
Yes, one that I'm going to have to pass to you, see because I am not equipped to answer that.
Mayor, if you wish, you are. And as soon as I speak, I think you'll remember, one of the conditions within the purchase and sale agreement is that consideration be given to the effects of the retaining wall on the south side of the river. What's that going to do to the north side? So as part of the purchase and sale agreement, it's going to be explored.
Thank you.
Right. If there's anyone online, if you could please use the raise hand function, that would be best. And I will take another first time question before I will take a repeat question. Anne, is there anyone else who has a question? Yeah, I see. No, right. Oh, there was a thumbs up there, so briefly.
Jesse Spears.
Okay.
Hi, Thank you.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead,
Um,
Jesse.
I'm just curious if this is maybe a two-part question. Hopefully it's quick. I'm curious if the point that was just made in the last question, it sounds like it's going to be reviewed as part of the conditions. And I'm curious if it would be possible to make really clear in those conditions when that component is reviewed, that his points about that specific his specific points be included when it's reviewed. I thought that was really well said and quite simple, the way that he made the point that modeling needs to be redone with the wall taken into account to really assess safety. And I'm wondering if we can be assured that when it's reviewed as part of the condition of sale, that aspect will be included in the considerations.
I believe that's the CAO had just indicated that that was a condition of sale, and if that was in the report, that would be considered.
Okay. Hopefully the specific way that he was discussing it will be considered. I thought that was valuable. And I also was curious, I didn't quite understand Anne's last question. Could somebody help us understand that in plain English about the RCMP and Anne's last question? I can't even really repeat it quite because I didn't quite understand it. She was asking about the water access and I can't even remember
having a second access.
No, it was just her last question just now. Maybe she could help us remember.
About the approving officer.
Exactly.
Oh, about the
That's
approving
right.
officer.
I couldn't,
Oh, okay.
I didn't understand those words, so I'm sorry. I couldn't even remember them. Can you help us understand what she was actually asking or what your answer meant?
So we'll go to CAO Baker for that again.
Thank you, Mary Hewitt. I believe the question was, did council direct staff to seek relief from section 76 of the Land
Right.
Title Act?
Right.
And that pertains to this is being quoted accurately, refers to access to the lake and river. And so council responded by saying, no, they have not provided direction to staff to seek relief from section 76 of the Land Title Act. And maybe just to clarify, the reason would be because it's the village's understanding that relief is not needed, that the access to the river and lake that's being proposed is equal to or better than what currently exists. And so we don't need to seek relief from legislation. We can adhere to the legislation.
I see. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Great. Anyone else with questions? See no one else.
I had a second question.
Yeah, no, I'm just checking online, Anne. I didn't lose you. All right, so go ahead with your second question, Anne.
Would council consider directing staff and or the developer to make the calculation and assessment of transfer of risk a priority to be one of the earliest conditions to be met? Because that information would be incredibly valuable for council in subsequent decisions.
So what I'm going to say is that we don't take direction from questions from the gallery if you wish to write to us, because if we do that, we could get anything thrown at us. I think we've got to stick with you. You're asking us questions but if you're wanting us to take a direction to staff through your questioning, it's better to have it exactly in writing so we know what your request is in your own words, rather than, I will never bring anything. If a public member brings something for me to raise at council, I will say, no, write it down, because it goes from your mouth to my ears and out my mouth to someone else. And I might get it wrong. It might have been a mouse and it ends up an elephant. And I won't be responsible for that. And I think that's only fair when we're talking about questions. You're asking council questions, not asking us to direct staff to take certain actions. So there are no other questions. We'll move into our business items. First item is Kemble Renovations rent relief. There is a recommendation here. Did you want to speak? Okay, I'll give you a moment to leave if you wish. Oh,
24 remaining.
24
Minus 2, sorry.
Yeah, but there were 2 pages, so about 40 people online, yeah. All right. We'll just stick with Ian because your title is too long.
Okay.
Did you want to speak?
Maybe, yes.
What's that?
CSI. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and everybody. So the first item is a rent relief for Kemble tenants. And as you know, renovations have been ongoing at the Kemble building. We've had a number of complications that have kept things going slowly, unfortunately. The installation of the HVAC systems, which is the ventilation and heat pumps for all the rooms, as well as the sprinkler system. That started in the beginning of June, and we hope that it will be done within about 2 months. But there have been complications. The latest is dealing with fire separations to meet code requirements for the holes that have been drilled through floors, for all the conduit and the pipes and everything that have to go through, and some supplier delays and so on. So it's taking a lot longer than we thought. And initially, we thought that the inconvenience to the tenants would be relatively minor, but we know now that, it's ongoing. They don't have working HVAC systems in their units as yet. Hopefully they'll have heat in the fall. We thought they might have air conditioning in the summer, but of course it was a cold summer. And there's been a lot of dust as well. So we are arranging to have a cleaning done of the units. We're hoping to just have that done at the end, once the dust settles literally. But because it's been ongoing, we'll be arranging to have cleaning done on the units to satisfy them. And we just think it's fair because of the inconvenience to offer them a month of rent relief due to that inconvenience. And we don't see it as being assistance to business in any ways. Clearly, the businesses that are there have been inconvenienced, and it would be a standard practice for a landlord to offer something in consideration.
Thank you, MSI. Don't know. You want the title? All right. All right. So the recommendation is that the village offer a credit to each tenant in the Kemble Memorial Center that is equivalent to 1 month of rental fees payable. By Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Bird. Any discussion? Councillor Leafwood.
To the chair. This is actually a question about something else in Melissa's letter. I don't know if it's not about the rent release, it's about the property tax. I asked that separately.
I guess the letter is in the agenda package, so yeah, go ahead.
To the chair. I'm just wondering,
Actually, maybe we'll wait. If
Okay.
it's not to do with this motion,
okay,
right? We'll wait until we're done with the motion.
okay.
On the motion. Councillor Brown.
Through the chair, how did we arrive at 1 month equivalent? And I suppose, will the disruption, is there a possibility that would grow longer than a month? And at that time, I suppose we would revisit it.
Yes, through the chair, it's possible there could be some further inconvenience, especially to tenants that are in certain parts of the building where there will have to be some structural work done on the inside and outside, basically pinning the walls together, where there are major cracks. I know the month of compensation isn't intended to be like a month of continuous time that they haven't been able to use it. It's been off and on for a day here, a day there, or a few days. So it just seemed like offering a month was a fair way to just put it all together rather than trying to calculate the number of days or
Right.
the different circumstances. So
Sure. Makes sense.
Other discussion on the motion? All those in favor? That motion is carried. Councillor Leland.
Okay, through the chair. I'm just, maybe I just need my memory refreshed. About the property taxes and charging them property tax. In our other properties that we own, they like the arena and the golf course. And so we have a yearly lease fee, which has implications because there's taxes on the property. So I'm just wondering why for the Campbell, did we go to leases rather than rent agreements? And is that what triggers the property tax for each business?
Through the chair, I can't really comment on a rent, lease. I don't know what to say. Either way, there's going to be an agreement in place, and you can call it a rent or you can call it a lease payment. But even in lease agreements, the term rent is often used. So I don't know. I wasn't around for that decision making. Why lease versus rent was used? Not related to, or not necessarily related. Actually, take that back. Definitely, if you've got a lease and we're disposing of the property to nonprofits or for-profit businesses, we're required to provide a copy of those lease agreements to BC Assessment, and then they tax those tenants because the property has been disposed to them, and now they're responsible for paying taxes on it. Rent would be viewed differently. Yeah, did I answer your question?
Not specifically. I'm just trying to remember why. Like, because they're renting a space in the Kemble. So doesn't the Kemble pay taxes as a property, not as a specific? Okay. And
I'll answer part of it because we had gone to month leases or rental agreements with all of them while we were undergoing the work earlier.
Mhm.
Otherwise, though, and we did give give them an exemption to paying the
Right.
property taxes for a couple of years, especially while the HVAC system wasn't working.
mhm.
And I don't know whether some of them requested a longer term or whether just BC Assessment sees that it's the same tenant in there. So that it's, it looks like a lease, but, so they're assessing them, which they're rightly taxed, right? The other ones, they're municipally owned and leased by not-for-profits. So we've given them permissive tax exemption.
Right.
We cannot do the same thing with a private business.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just confused as to why. Like it seems like it's a rental property, like they rent a room and they have to pay property tax on it. I just find that hard to understand.
Oh, go ahead.
yes, so the chair, I just had a comment about the relief that was provided in the past, that because they're businesses, they would have to pay the property tax. And so there was a council made motions that the tax would be paid for from their lease fees. For prior years.
Yeah. Okay. Can I ask one more? Sorry, go ahead, Chair. In their lease agreement, does it say they have to pay property taxes?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Right.
I still don't understand, but.
Well, I think we do charge less than market rent for any organization, any business or organization that rents in the Campbell building. I don't believe that we're at the market rental rate.
I think,
You gotta be careful. That's illegal.
yeah, I thought,
What?
They're not allowed to provide
Oh,
assistance to business
Oh.
by renting or leasing a
okay.
space for below market rents.
oh, okay. Well, not, okay. Sorry.
It's competitive.
Okay, all right. Okay, so 7.2, City Hall upgrades project. Speak to that one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you can see, the painting is going really well. They'll probably be done by the end of next week, they're hoping. The building's looking really sharp, and this painting should last longer than the last coating, according to the promise of the contractors. But we did find out when they got the lift up to the roof that this Widow's Rock railing is in really poor condition. There's a number of rotted out spindle and so on, and rendering it really unsafe. So the carpenter went up and had a look at it as well. And some of the bottom rails are completely rotted out. Some of the spindles are rotted out. So there's even a risk that it could get blown down in a major windstorm. So it needs to come down for sure. And once it's down, we can assess whether any of the parts are going to be salvageable to be reused, but it will be a fairly substantial carpentry project that will include custom millworking. So these spindles, when they were previously done, there was a place in the Lower Mainland that actually does them individually. So there's, I believe, 48 spindles on the roof, and each one costs about $100. So right there, spindles are going to be about 5,000. But this needs to get done. If council approves the additional budget, it's unlikely that we would get the railing replaced in line with the painting, because the painters will be done. But the painters have, the painting contractor has indicated that they'd be willing to rent a lift to a carpenter to do the repair. But right now it's key to get it down while we have the lift here, and then assess what we can do. So whether this goes, try to get done this year's budget, or it gets put into the 2026 budget, is something that we can look at. And I've also put in legislation in there, just noting that it is one of the historical features of the building that so you can see in historical photographs. So it would be nice to.
Councillor Brown?
Through the chair. So a few thoughts. One, I did note that this specific feature was removed at some period of time and then was put back around 15 years ago. So I'm wondering, do people go up there? Like what is the use of this space? Because at this point, we're looking at asset renewal deficit, where we're trying to find hundreds and sometimes thousands here and there. We're upping rates for some of our leaseholders. We raise taxation because of it. So $25,000 expense on something that's purely ornamental, I would be against, unless there was some sort of useful need for it.
Through the chair, so uncertain when it might have been taken down. We do have photos from the 70s, 80s that show it there, but we don't know if it was replaced during the more recent renovations. It has no functional purpose. It is purely decorative because the railing is only about 2 feet off the ground, so it doesn't need any code. You couldn't have people up there. And yeah, there's not really any access. There is a hatch that goes through the attic, but there's obviously no staircase to get there either. So yeah, it is just a decorative feature.
Okay. Yeah. So I would just say that $25,000 for a decorative feature feels out of line with some of the decisions we've been making fiscally.
So who could?
Through the chair. Is that part of the CBT grant that we got for restoration of the city hall, that it has to be restored to its original character, and that was part of it, the Widow's Walk? So it has heritage characterization. So even though it may not be functional, it's heritage, and that's part of why we got a restoration grant for the city hall.
Councillor Burt?
Through the chair, I would be very surprised if the CBT would start suing us to put it back up. Like, they understand that we're, if they were the funder, I mean, ideally we will get it back up, but it doesn't have to be this year. Certainly, the point you're raising is that it should be taken down so that, it doesn't blow up in a hurricane along with several of the cedar shakes and smack someone. So let's, be safe, take it down, but leave it to flusher times to put it back up there. I love it. I think it looks great. But it didn't look terrible when it was gone either. And now the rest of the building looks so great. Who's gonna notice that the decorative icing is missing?
Were you looking there to?
No.
Oh, no, I just wondered if
No.
there was a comment that Cecilia wanted to make, and I wasn't looking that way. It wouldn't be CBT, it would be more Heritage Canada. That because it is a character defining feature which gave it its National Historic Site designation. That would be more what I was concerned with, because we would be choosing not to replace a feature that is one of the character defining elements of the building.
And
That's fine. It's,
Mhm.
well, and I honestly think we want to do it within the next year because it won't happen otherwise. I would suspect because it's out of sight, out of mind. There's a few things that disappeared that used to be in the building that are no longer present because they got stuck in a corner and disposed of because somebody didn't know what they were for. So I'll read the recommendation, and if somebody wishes to make it, they can. And that's that the Widows Walk on City Hall's roof be repaired, and that the 2025 to 2029 financial plan bylaw be amended to include an additional 25,000 for unforeseen repairs associated with the City Hall upgrades project, including 17,000 from the City Hall Reserve Fund and 8,000 from the Building Machinery, Vehicles and Equipment Reserve Fund. Moved by Councillor Leithwood, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any further discussion? Councillor Lang.
Seeing that the funding for this project is in place, it's not going to affect taxation rates within the village. I think it's appropriate that we replace it and stick with the original design of the building. Especially since it's going to look so good after the painting's complete. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? And opposed? Would you like negative votes recorded?
Yes, please.
Councillor Bird, yes? Sure. Okay, and so that I'm voting in favor, so that motion carries. Next item is 7.3, and Councillor Leachwood would like to declare her conflict.
Yes, I work for community services, so I will use myself.
Did you close the?
So 7.3 is the official community plan and zoning bylaw amendment for first reading. So is that's also you, Ian?
Yes.
Okay.
So background for this proposal is that Community Services has an opportunity to purchase the property beside their current building on B Avenue. It is currently a residential house, which they would then convert into their office space and program space to rather than expand their current facility. So if you'll recall, a couple of years ago, they applied for a variance to expand their current facility and put an emergency shelter in there and have some parking relief. So those variances would lapse, since they're not going to move forward with those plans. They will instead convert this existing property. So to do that, though, the property is currently zoned R1 residential, which doesn't allow office uses and their programs. So the proposal would change it to a commercial zone. Now, the community services is currently zoned for C2, which is Central Business District, which allows for a variety of uses, including retail, restaurants, and so on. So there was some discussion as to whether or not that was appropriate to have on B Avenue, which is a primarily residential street. So therefore, this property would be spot zoned. So including the current property and this new property would have a special zone that is tailored to their proposed uses. So we would remove the retail and restaurants and hotels from the designation and keep the other aspects of the C2 commercial zone and create the special C2 spot zone. that will allow them to have the use of the property and give some assurance to the neighbors that things won't get out of hand with a major overdevelopment of the site. It would still allow for the RM multi-residential designation, which is allowed in the C2 zone. So if they didn't want to have sheltered housing, that kind of thing, as per their plans that were approved a couple of years ago, that would be able to move forward for housing development. And I believe some of this is contingent upon them obviously purchasing the property. Any OCP change, however, does have to be permanent. It would not be reliant on any transactions happening. So that's something to consider, is that once these bylaws are approved, it would be permanently in place for these properties. There is a proposed date for the public hearing, which I believe is October 7th. And so the proponents would be responsible for paying for that, and we would just have it here. We don't anticipate a major being too controversial, so we don't have to rent a big hall, but it is a requirement to have a public hearing, and they will have to have a sign put out on the property to advertise to the neighbors that this is in progress. So happy to answer any other questions.
All right, any questions? Councillor Brown?
Through the chair, it did come up that, there could be a concern that we would change the zoning and then that the sale wouldn't go through. Is there, and you kind of touched on this, but is there any way short of doing the zoning after the sale that it could be conditional on that sale actually occurring, just to prevent us rezoning something unnecessarily?
Yeah, so certainly the OCP has to be done, and it would stand. Zoning can be, I believe, under legislation, contingent upon the sale of a property. There is some wording in that in the Local Government Act, and the corporate officer, correct me if I'm wrong, I can certainly follow up on that and have that. When this comes back to council, we can approach it from that perspective, if that's something that is of interest to council. But the main thing though would be the OCP would have to go through, and obviously the parties want to be assured that that this would be in place in time for the sale. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to go through the sale.
Fair enough.
Any further discussion? Councillor Bird?
Through the chair. So currently, the zoning and the OCP land use, the whole designation is for like R1 residential. So you could put a duplex or a single family home,
Correct.
but you couldn't put 6. Soon as the OCP changes, let's say the zoning doesn't, would you be able to put 6 or only a duplex or a house?
If the OCP changed and the zoning doesn't, then the current zoning would stand. You don't put a duplex on, but because the OCP has changed to allow for the core commercial, somebody could apply for a rezoning to allow for that more intensive use. If it's something that's allowed in the core commercial land use designation of the OCP.
My question was in line with what Councillor Brown asked. So it has to be done before they purchase it, or they just want the assurance of council that we would support the activities that they want to undertake on that extra property that they acquire prior to doing the rezoning and the OCP change, because I do have concerns that for some reason, if it does fall through, there's, you did a good job of limiting what can be done by doing the spot zoning, but there's still the concern that there could be unintended consequences.
I'm sorry, I would just caution council against moving in that direction. Council needs to keep an open mind and be open to they can't have already made their decision. So saying that you're supporting this without going forward with these bylaw changes
Okay.
can get you into some trouble.
Okay, so we can't support in principle.
I would not recommend it.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right,
If I may add, Madam Mayor, so the council could enact the bylaws in 2026, so after this, the deal closes, but as the corporate officer suggested, it can't be a foregone conclusion at that point. And really, if council is intending to approve it, especially the OCP change, then it would have to be intending to approve it regardless of the circumstances.
all right. So then the recommendation is that the official community plan amendment bylaw 1320-2025 be introduced and read a first and second time, and that land use amendment bylaw 1321-2025 be introduced and read a first and second time. And further, that the village provide notice of a public hearing for October 7th, 2025 in relation to official community plan amendment bylaw 1320-2025 and land use amendment bylaw 1321-2025. By Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Byrd. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay. So on 7.4, which is the development permit for 37 Front Street. Want to speak to that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Heritage development permit applications in the newer OCP past 2022 do allow staff to approve routine heritage development permits if it meets the heritage development guidelines. Or there are certain circumstances where it must come to council. So if it doesn't meet the guidelines, then it has to come to council. And then there's a special circumstance here where the sign that overhangs the sidewalk, there is provisions in the OCP that say if there's encroachment onto the street allowance, then council must be the one that approves the heritage development permit. So 3 years ago, KSCU got a development permit for the front facade to repaint. And the color scheme they're going with is basically the same as it was before. In terms of the colors, you can see they're going to be doing things a little bit differently. There's also kind of a beige color over the door. But we clarify with them that that's actually going to be storm gray, which was one of the colors that was approved previously. But what the main crux of this coming towards council is because of the sign that is over the sidewalk, which had been overlooked before. They weren't replacing the sign before, but now they are going to replace it with this new logo. So it does require council's approval, and if council approves it, then the village will enter an encroachment agreement with the applicant to have that all sorted out and be there by foot.
Are there any questions? I do have one. It doesn't appear that it's going to be any larger. The encroachment isn't going to be greater than the current signage, correct?
Correct, that's right.
Right. So the recommendation is that council approve heritage and commercial core development permit application DP 2025 -05. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Byrd. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Shall we? I don't know. I don't think our procedures bylaw states anything about having to wait for a council member to return. I know when we do virtual at the regional district that if they lose connectivity, we have to give them 5 minutes to restore connectivity, but
Through the mayor, there's nothing in the procedure bylaw at this time, no.
Great. So then we're on to development permit application at 1630 Duthie Street. Ian.
It's been busy for planning.
Yeah.
This is a fairly routine application. Again, the OCP that was passed in 2022 introduced the new wildfire protection development permit. And this development has been reviewed and I met with the owner, as mentioned in the report, to make sure that they are aware of best fire smart practices to try and mitigate any wildfire risks to their property and neighboring property. And we're quite satisfied with the eligibility of the property owner and the proposal.
So the recommendation is that wildfire development permit application DP 2025-04 be approved without conditions. Okay, moved by Councillor Bird, second by Councillor Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor? Was carried. 7.6 proclamation request and proclamation policy. First, I want to thank Joni. Your title is even longer than Ian's.
Last name is bad.
Can I? So thank you for putting the work into developing the policy for us. And any questions before I read the recommendation? Okay. So the recommendation is that council adopt the proclamation request policy as presented and that the request from Pacific Sport Columbia Basin to proclaim National Coaches Week in Kaslo be approved in accordance with the new policy. Moved by Councillor Brown, second by Councillor Lang. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Oh. It's in here somewhere. Where is the wording of the proclamation? Because it's now, I should actually read it this evening, otherwise it's been hollow. So I just can't.
Page 128.
120. Okay. Oh, there we go. 129. So whereas from September 15th to 21st, 2025, communities across Canada will join together to recognize National Coaches Week. And whereas the goal of the week is to celebrate the tremendous positive impact coaches have on sport participants and their communities. And whereas during the week, thousands of coaches will receive #ThanksCoach message and be invited to participate in various celebratory events, including free online clinics and virtual workshops. And whereas coaches will receive recognition for the time they devote to ensuring Canadians live active, healthy lifestyles. Therefore, I, Susan Hewitt, Mayor of Kaslo, do hereby proclaim September 15th to 21st, 2025 as Coaches Week in Kaslo and urge all civic, social, and fraternal organizations and business establishments to give this campaign the greatest possible support. Looks like, do we have to? It has room for the seal and all that.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Council, for doing that. Great. And then permissive tax exemption bylaw. Any questions for staff before I read the recommendation? That's where all the organizations submitted their applications in advance. Councillor Bird.
Yeah, through the chair. So in previous years, we also forgot to see the applications where we could, I remember we checked off the day. I'm thinking of what strikes me is, I'm looking at the policy. So we approved the policy in July. And within the policy there, it goes on to 5 or 7 pages. There's a lot of criteria before your application is accepted. And at this point, we're being asked to approve. So My question is, I'm assuming that if we are being asked to approve all of these applications, it's because they all meet the criteria in every sense.
Yes, staff would have done that vetting and would have worked with them to see, you know, where they might have been missing information. So, there are many things that we purposely put in policy so staff can do that work in advance. So we're not poring over the applications to determine who we're going to give the exemptions to. Staff has done that work in advance, so they're all eligible, the ones that are being put forward for consideration. And that is supplemental.
Yes, I'm a little confused about the way the golf course is, there's 3 places where, it talks about permissive tax exemptions, and I could have gone to the cadastral map and figured out each plan, because it goes on PID plan.
Yeah.
So, I was hoping for a Coles note, explanation of why the, Village of Kaslo appears 3 times, yeah, as an applicant for the permissive tax exemption
Or the golf course, I mean.
for the golf course.
Right.
Golf course, golf club, various iterations.
I think I can explain 2 of them. One is the main golf course, which has existed for many years, and then we added the extra hole right off of Oak Street to the south. We added an extra parcel of land, and it's probably a separate lease arrangement because it was not part of the original. And the other one might be for the clubhouse itself, or the clubhouse and with the restaurant and the locker room downstairs. That's, I guess.
Through the mayor, and I apologize, I can't answer specifically because I even haven't been to the golf course, so I don't have the property background. What the mayor is saying would generally be correct. So a permissive tax exemption is provided to a property, but just because there's multiple PID numbers or folio numbers doesn't mean that it's not the same property that you would look and say, oh, this is all the city hall property, but maybe it's actually 2 properties, if that makes sense.
Councilor Bird?
Still on the golf course, is that permissive tax exemption extended to the restaurant? Because under the policy, it would seem that if you are a nonprofit operating a business offering items that have a comparative value to any other, that you can't give a permissive tax exemption because that would be favoring a business.
Mhm.
I would suggest that we're giving it to the golf course, not to the concessionaire. It's not going to the people who operate the concession. Because you're right, we can't do that. And that's why they're not named. It's because it's the golf course or the golf club that is getting the exemption for that property. But do you have any?
You're correct.
Okay.
Which enables them to lease it at a preferential rate because they're not paying any taxes for that building or for the footprint of the restaurant. Little bit gray there, I think.
Councilor Brown?
Through the chair, I guess similar in what Councillor Leith was talking about with how they're paying property tax for the spots they're renting over at the Kemble, and their businesses who are renting the space. And it seems that the golf course may be similar in that it's a business that would be renting the space. Yet we're charging those taxes, and over there we wouldn't. So just for consistency's sake, I guess to understand why one would be and one wouldn't, and how that would not be assistance to a business.
If,
That's where you're gonna have to help me.
through the chair, what might make sense is to provide staff an opportunity to gather information, come back with clarification. Doesn't preclude council from giving first, second, and possibly
Right.
third reading this evening. The permissive tax exemption bylaw doesn't need to be approved until into October, so we have time. If you wanted to proceed with giving it readings, staff can gather more information, come back at the October meeting and provide some clarification.
So then the recommendation would be that the permissive tax exemption bylaw number 1325/2025 be introduced and given first and second reading.
Through the mayor, it still could be given third.
And
The reason for that is if there is no change, if this conversation is all for moot, then we don't have to wait 2 more meetings.
Okay. Councilor Bird?
Yep, still on discussion here. The other one I was wondering about was Kootenai Lake Innovation Center Society. So if they're getting a tax exemption, they are an umbrella society for for-profit businesses in the same way as, let's say, the Chamber of Commerce asking for a tax exemption. They're a not-for-profit, but if they've got businesses working, for-profit businesses working in their building, then, because just because the Kootenai Lake Innovation Center Society is a not-for-profit, the people that have desks and are working in there, are they all not-for-profit as well?
No, but I will introduce that if you are using that as an argument, then we also give the Langham exemption, and they have many for-profit entities. That is a way that they sustain with them, that they sustain their building by renting to other organizations who help pay their bills. And right, so we don't know it, it could be the same thing with, I'm imagining it's the same thing with Click, that they are charging a fee in order to provide a service. And some of that is to transient workers who come into town and want, right? Because it was a co-work space is what they were originated as. And I know that there have been people from out of town who have come in and used the space for a couple of hours to have meetings and stuff. So if we've adopted a policy that must allow, it allows for these activities to take place. So are we questioning the permissive tax exemptions that we're giving, or are we wanting to revisit the policy?
I'm just not sure that the policy understands your point, which I take and I think is a good point. But I'm just, if I were, rereading that policy, I'd be stretching to accommodate your thoughts there, which I think are completely valid. But yeah, strictly speaking on the policy, it is not really clear that either the Langham or the Kootenai Lake Innovation Center should be getting any kind of permissive tax exemption on the basis that it looks like assistance to business per the policy.
Councilor Leathwood?
To the chair. I agree. It's very confusing. I think if I go back to Melissa's letter, she said she sublets from Click. So she's being charged property tax, but Click is getting an exemption. Now, she said in her letter that she sublets from Click. So should she continue to do that, or should she have her own agreement with the village? So that's where, to me, it sounded a little bit gray. So on the permissive tax report, what exactly is Click being exempt from? Like, is it the whole building taxes or just the co-work space?
So through the mayor, and again, I apologize, I'm not property organization specific. So at this time, the permissive tax exemption bylaw, which has mirrored past years' bylaws, is for 100% exemption for anything that was not statutorily exempted. So it's not a church. Most likely you don't even have to think about that part. So specifically for this building, I can't speak to that building, but in general, this bylaw is providing 100% exemption to the properties that are listed in the bylaw.
And for Click, it would be the spaces that they
Right,
rent.
right. So that's where I was questioning about, you know, she indicates that she's subletting from them, but she's also being charged property tax. So if Click is getting an exemption, like it, I don't know, it just doesn't seem to connect or something.
Well, maybe because hers is not a not-for-profit. It's clearly in BC assessment has seen that, right? So it's Click as an organization is a not-for-profit. So they must show it on their books that they're renting a guaranteed space. And I think that might be the difference. The other ones my understanding is they come in and out.
Yeah,
They're not
yeah.
permanently residing in a space. It's not dedicated just for them. That would be my guess, is that's why that is a separate thing. It's not her once in a while using a space.
She has an office there.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so sounds like it's a dedicated space just for her business. So nobody has moved, read the recommendation, but nobody has,
I'll move it.
okay, so I moved it
Verify it.
for 3 readings.
Yeah.
Okay, and seconded by Councillor Lang.
Repeat the motion.
But, okay, that permissive tax exemption bylaw 2025 be introduced and given first, second, and third reading. Councillor Burke?
Just one final thing. That would mean that we would be giving 100% the applicants, so they've got 100% of their tax will be exempted through this motion.
Whatever portions are outlined in the report.
If I could, I'm sorry, I'm wondering if your question is this all done and said if you pass this motion?
Mhm.
And no, the bylaw still has to be adopted.
Yeah.
And we will bring back more information to council at the next meeting about these rent leases in non-profit. Council will still have the opportunity to rescind third reading, change anything that you would like, give third reading again, and then one more meeting ahead, you can still adopt. So you're not setting anything in stone at this time.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Freedom of information bylaw. You want to speak to that one?
I'm happy to answer any questions. We did have sorry, through the mayor. We did have a request for information come in, which sort of opened this whole thing. And it was noticed that the village's freedom of information bylaw is back from, I believe it's 1994. So quite outdated legislation has changed a lot in that time as well. Not forming part of the bylaw, but just as council's information. LGMA does release a list of typical local government records and which records are typically just available to the public without having to do a formal FOI request. So that is included in here as well. Again, doesn't form part of the bylaw, but will be made available to the public with the intention of those documents that are routinely available without a request will eventually be available to all of the public online. Not every single one of the documents.
Right. Okay, so the recommendation is that the Village of Kaslo Freedom of Information Bylaw number 1324/2025 be introduced and read a first, second, and third time. Councillor Brown, seconded by Councillor Lang. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. And there are no late items and we have no in-camera meeting. So that brings us to the end. So recommendation is that the meeting will turn at 7:40.